The subject of this painting is my sister's wedding cake. She had a beautiful, intimate evening wedding with a lovely and very delicious cake.
This is the reference photo for our wedding cake, and I'm going to use a technique of double masking. So I'm going to go ahead and mask all the whites and then add a very pale layer of the yellow ink, very pale, and then remask on top of that before doing the background. So I'll begin by lightening the drawing again with the cotton ball and some alcohol. And I'll mask all of the areas that need to be white. We have some of the piping on the cake. And just a little bit more of the decoration on the cake. And we'll let this dry, and then I'll add a layer of ink over it and then mask again. We have the cake masked on all the white areas, but I'd like to go ahead and tone some of the paper before I mask again. So I'll be putting in some lemonade and alcohol over the cake and some Cool Perry over the topper. I'm going to begin by dipping the cotton ball into some alcohol and just slightly wetting some of the paper. I'll be adding the lemonade this way. I really want just a very pale shade. Do the same with the Cool Perry. Like a slightly smoother look for the cake, so I'll drop some alcohol through this. And I'll let it dry somewhat vertically. This is our wedding cake with the toned layer of ink and the very pale lemonade and the pale Cool Perry on it. And this was a night wedding in a kind of a dim restaurant. So here are two photos of the cake. And I think I'd like to go ahead and put in a dark background around the cake. I had an idea of putting the dark background in and then writing a verse from their service, so around it. So I think a dark background would show, if I write in white or gold, would look very pretty. To add the dark background, I have some choices. I can just pounce some ink in, or I can mask over all of this, or I can use a different type of masking, and this is Frisket film. And I think I'll use the Frisket film. So it is a piece of kind of like very low-tack contact paper, and it's clear and has back, and then you cut it out and you just put it over the area that you'd like to mask. So I'm going to create this shape out of this paper, and the trick to remember is that this side is kind of slick, and I want to write on this side, but I'll have to do the reverse image of it. I'll just use the same reference photo to create my shape. So I've drawn my reverse shape. I'm just going to cut it out. Now that I have my cutout, I can try it on for size. And it looks pretty good. So the next step will be to peel off the backing and to set it down. If you do not have Frisket film, it works just as well to add a whole second nice coating of masking fluid. But this is a slightly different way of doing it, and kind of fun. So the next trick is separating the two layers. So you can kind of see where the Frisket film is. For the inking, I'd like a kind of nondescript pattern, maybe leathery or parchment-like, that I can write on, but I want it fairly dark so that the cake is really highlighted and the words will show up. So I've selected teak wood, espresso, ginger, and a little bit of latte. And I'm not 100% confident about these edges. So I think I'm going to pounce the edges, which would have a much lower chance of disaster happening. And then ink a little bit more freely through the background. Here is our brass splattered brown background cake picture. And it's time for the big reveal. Did the masking fold? Let's see what we have. Oh, not too bad. I would say there is indeed a wedding cake here. And some of this might actually be the old masking fluid. All right, this isn't really too bad. I'm going to come up real close. We can see that our original masking gives us a nice idea where the piping was, and we can keep that hopefully kind of white as we add in the rest of the cake. Got a little bit of ink on the edges, but we should be able to incorporate that. And up here in the topper, we've got some nice toned areas on the darker areas. So I think this is all very workable. Some of these areas, instead of cleaning up the inside, I'm actually going to just clean around the outside. And I'll use the sepia pen and define those edges. Because I think this will help us get off to a good start. For some of the toning of the shadows on the cake, I'm going to use a marker. This is EB2, whatever that means. And it's kind of an olive-ish color. I'm going to use it right along this top edge here. I'm going to work with the Q-tip. And as I put down a little bit of marker, then I'm going to just blend it back. So, whoops. So hopefully it'll be just a very controlled application of ink. This is a purplish marker, and it might be a little intense. We'll see. I'm going to just dab it in. This is the pointy swab with alcohol, and I'm going to blend in some of the purple marker that I just put on. This is the sepia pen, and I'm going to just lightly tap in some brown under some of the most shadowed areas.
This is the alcohol, and I'm going to blend the sepia. Add some shading underneath some of the piping. There's a little bit of ink on the Q-tip. Lower edge is kind of funky, so this will be a good time to kind of clean that up. This isn't exactly cleaning up all that well, so I'm going to maybe add a little more shading in, see if we can redefine it by the shading here. Straighten this out a little bit. I need to tone the topper a little bit. This is the lemonade. I think it might just work out better if I make it closer to the cake. This will give me something to lift out of. Also putting in some Coolperry. I want it light, but I need something to help create some dimension in here. So this is the brush and alcohol, and we'll work on doing some lifting here. This is the sepia pen. Kind of brownish marker. So going back over some of the piping. Softening with the pointy swab. So for the next phase, I've decided I'm going to put a passage that she had read during the service behind it. And it's from 1 Corinthians, the love is patient and kind passage. And I can see why people stamp, because I'm a little bit terrified about handwriting this behind here. But I'm going to do it anyway. I've sort of figured out where my lines are going to go, and I'm just going to write up till the cake and then pick it back up afterwards. So we'll do a few lines on camera, and then I will finish up the rest by myself. I have a piece of paper with some straight lines to use as a guide. So I've numbered all the lines, and I've got the lines listed here. Here it is with the writing. I had to do a little surgery behind the cake in our verse because I wanted it to fill in properly. So now I just need to kind of finish up the cake without messing up the words. So I think there's some areas that you could use just a little touching up with the white pen now that I have it out. And the pen gives me an opportunity to kind of go over some of these lines.